we're going to turn this into a 6-pack beer holder. I already made these little coasters for them that are just the beer boxes mounted on some tiles. I started by tracing out the bottom of a 6-pack because I know that can hold the 6 beers of the size that I want. We're going to use these railings to make them wooden, and so I just placed them on the edge of the rack and gave us some additional width that's exactly the size of the railings. Then I measured that out. We're going to set it up against the edge of the board, which will give us the width of the wood that we need. And so that'll leave us a nice spot as we just slide that down. And we're left with this line to trace. Now, if you had a table saw, this would be easy. When I moved, I couldn't bring my table saw. So we're going to use my jigsaw, and I'm just going to set up these as a guide for a rip fence so I get a nice straight cut. You could also use a skill saw. I can't find mine either, lost in the move somewhere. Cut the bottom to 8 inches, which makes up for the 7.5 inches that modeled out by our standard 6-pack, plus an extra 1/4 inch on either side to account for the thickness of the plywood that we'll be using. And we'll stand this up on end here. So now is when you get your model, and I just kind of sized it up there, and I'll make a little mark because we want the top of this to be just higher than the top of the beer bottle. Measured out before, and it looks like 10 inches will be a pretty good point. Now we have our ends made, and we need to make the length for the rails that'll go between. So one of these will go on each end, and then we'll connect them with some rails here. Now, I showed you the fancy math that didn't matter before. At this point, the math kind of matters a little bit, but it's easy. Each beer bottle is about, at its widest, just a little over 2.25 inches, and you need to fit 3 with a little gap in between so that you can fit them in there. So if we just measured it out there, and I can show you that that's in fact just a little over 2.25. So we almost want 2.25 times 3 is 6.75 inches between this thing, and ours are actually going to be just under 7.5. So we'll have plenty of room to fit all the beers in. So a good way to measure this out, you can easily just subtract your 1/4 inch from this 8-inch bottom. But I just stood those up on the end, and then slide this board in here and line it up, and you can measure out right the length of that. So then we'll bring it over to the saw and cut. We need probably 3 for each side, so we'll cut 9 of these, and these are just over 7.5 inches long. The hardest part of this project is what's coming up next. Because we're only working with 1/4 inch plywood, what it will do is have a tendency, if you just drive nails through it, it'll have a tendency to split and the nails won't hold. So I would highly recommend, I've pre-marked where I'm going to put all the holes, because we'll put this at the bottom, we'll put them in here, all the nails. Highly recommend finding the tiniest drill bit you have and just drilling some pilot holes. Obviously you want it to be smaller than the nails you're going to use, but that'll keep all your stuff from splitting, so that you can put it in when you glue it up, and the nails will actually hold instead of just split your wood. So now that the base is dry, I'm just going to, and we got the nails in through our pre-drilled holes here into this rail, up through the bottom into this rail and into the end plates here. Just want to make sure that we can fit this 6-pack in there, basically widthwise, and that looks good. I actually might like a little bit more space in between them, because they might be a little bit tricky to get in and out, but they fit. So we're going to continue on and start Next step is putting in these side rails here, which we'll just snug in and then do the same thing, screw, nail, and glue those in. Okay, so there's the glue up all done. We're pretty much at the final finished product. Just took some sandpaper down and sanded all the edges, softened all the edges a little bit, just so they're not quite so sharp. And now we'll take a, since we're going for like a rustic look, I'll take a bottle of some vinegar and steel wool. Actually, I have that left over from another project. And we'll just wipe that on, and the vinegar interacts with the wood, chemical reaction, and it just causes it to age a little bit. So by the time we're done, this will look nice and rustic.